Alright homies, I am back with chapter 30 of Reincarnation Coliseum, and it begins exactly where it ended with Vivian's big move blowing up Team Mikigami. The smoke is still covering their position while announcer Coco goes on to say that Vivian's attack might have killed them. The crowd, including Zul and Marl, who hugs her in tears, only think the worst. Just then, Mikigami and Alice appear in the air as the smoke evaporates, with Coco continuing the play-by-play and announcing the duo saved. Signaling that the fight will continue, Zul and Marl are seen slumped with relief, while Vivian angrily questions how he dodged that attack. Vivian thinks over the speed differences in their activation abilities, with Team Mikigami taking 0.5 seconds, while her own team's ability only takes 0.3 seconds. Shouting towards Mikigami for a moment, she questions what he could have done to avoid it. As Mikigami watches shard-like objects fall in front of him, he grabs one and realizes that it's metal, but not part of the gear. Gripping Alice's cheeks, they ascend higher to survey the arena. In the beginning, Mikigami noticed there had to be a reason why the duo increased their speed, kept their distance, and reflected off each other. He concludes that they're using magnetic force, but mentions that no shop in the country sold it. Before he could finish what it means, the panels switch to Desmos, now up from her chair, answering excitedly that it means Vivian is holding a rare gear. She's in disbelief of the speed and the destructive power it holds. Merchant Dust chimes in that during a trip to the ruins, they came across it. Desmos responds that this was to be expected of the great merchant, and hopefully he continues to not disappoint. The match will only get more interesting as they combat each other at incredible speeds. With both fighters deeming the situation problematic, the fight will be determined by a 1-second scramble. Switching things back to Zul's hideout, where we see Mikigami and Alice practicing maneuvers, spatial exchange. He talks with Marl about the plan to continuously place traps while moving about randomly. Increasing the number means there's a high chance of being caught up in it. That said, Marl asks if using spatial exchange will cut out the traps that are set. Mikigami responds that it's a gamble and they should be mindful of some things. He gives two examples that could pose a problem. The first example is if the enemy was to use landmines or floating bombs. If spatial exchange were to be used, it would detonate and possibly kill them. Marl begins to grasp the situation and why he wouldn't want to use it then. Second example is an unavoidable situation where their opponent continuously shoots something like arrows at them that could cover the entire arena. Even while using spatial exchange, they wouldn't be able to avoid it all and be struck by any one of the arrows. Suzu agrees and states that there are various things to consider when using the technique. For now though, Mikigami is working with Alice on countermeasures to not get caught in situations like that. What they're working on now is a combined technique of ultra-fast evasion and attack. Put it simply, they'll be evading so fast that they can't retaliate, but at the same time find a workaround that allows them to attack just as fast. As Marl gets excited about this new development in the works, Mary looks on unfazed before handing Mikigami a cup of water. Letting out a sigh, Mikigami goes on to say that Vivian fights with a gear that may be able to counter them, which means it's available in the market, but Fine states that to be impossible. Mary adds that Vivian is just a former civilian. She has no experience as a fighter. If she was to move at such a high speed, her body might break down while trying to take on something as fast as spatial exchange. Mikigami responds that even if that were possible, it would be extremely difficult to do and the chances are low. Panels then switch to Vivian's training ground where she says the same thing as Mikigami. In her state of exhaustion, her owner G Dust mentions that now is the time to overcome that problem. Vivian claims that it's not so easy to accomplish as G laughs and agrees. As he smirks, he tells her that it's not him that will overcome this after all, but her. With Vivian rolling around on the ground like a child, she tells him that if things keep up this way, she'll die. But he refutes this and tells Vivian to stop telling lies. That's when he asks if this is fun to her because she might die. Vivian stares at the ceiling for a moment before responding that he does pay attention to people. G tells her that anyone would be able to understand that much of her nature, but for now, he'll go look for her partner. Meanwhile, just keep practicing and don't worry about the damage before closing the door behind him. Vivian exhaustingly states that when it comes to finding people, there's nobody better than him at it. Sitting up and seeing the huge damage done to another part of the room, she wonders if her opponents will be able to avoid this. Switching back to the Coliseum, She replays in her head what G told her, which was if an opponent can avoid her assault, then things could get problematic. The answer lies in that split second of ultra fast evasion and attacking. Vivian sends another wave of metal toward Team Mikigami, but it misses due to them using spatial exchange. Both teams are now working toward that 1 second possibility in order to gain the upper hand. In conclusion, everyone is in for a long-term battle. As Coco continues the play-by-play of Team Mikigami avoiding the blow yet again, Desmos finds it interesting and asks if things are going as G expected. He agrees before Desmos laughs that adjustments had to be made to keep the battle close. There is no other merchant out there that knows my taste, as she pats him on the back. G adds that the crowd is lively and his effort has paid off, but there is a downside to this. Desmos looks at him puzzled before he says that as an owner of a slave, he can't bet on the fights. How about it, Lady Desmos? Will you have a match with me? As he extends his hand, he continues that since it's a personal bet, there should be no problem. Desmos looks down at him and responds that if he wins, he'll get Alice, Mikigami, and Zade's seat in management. She expected this much from the greedy merchant, but asks what it is that he's trying to take from her. Desmos grabs his hand, which takes G by surprise, and says she's feeling good about this and is fine with it. Squeezing his hand even more, she asks him if he is victorious in the Coliseum, what is it that he truly wants? G calms down before saying that what he wants is Lady Desmos herself. She's confused by the answer, but G goes on to say that he would only want one night to hold her in his arms. The answer obviously got to her as she crushes the ground and asks for it to be repeated. Trembling, G repeats the request desperately before Desmos asks that he's putting on such a show just for a chance with her. She thinks for a bit, then calmly agrees that if he wins, she'll hold him instead. If he plays his cards right, she'll even have his kids, but if he loses, G has to give Desmos everything that he owns. Is there anything dissatisfying about those conditions? She says. G says that he only has one issue with the conditions, and that's when he wins. With a smirk on his face, he makes it clear that he doesn't want her embracing him, but instead him embracing her. Desmos can't help but laugh before telling him that he's so passionate about it, but she'll think about it if he wins. G could only thank Desmos for the kind words as panels shift back to the tag battle. Mikigami claims that the preparations are now complete and it's time to counterattack. As Vivian and Paula dash toward them, Paula is the first to take a tumble from the trap that was set. The crowd's reaction is mixed with disbelief and laughter as Mikigami says that all he needed was that 1 second. Paula continues to tumble at an incredible speed, and Vivian mentions that when they were running by that same spot earlier, there was nothing there, so spatial exchange must have been used to alter the ground to the point that such a trap appeared invisible. She realizes the only person who could come up with that is Mikigami and tries to bait Alice with an insult. Alice then smirks at Vivian after realizing she pulled that off on her own. Mikigami looks at Paula continuing her tumble and mentions there's no way she can adjust herself to get back up. As Paula begins slowing down, Mikigami uses spatial exchange, but it misses. Paula becomes engulfed in a spiral technique that surprises Mikigami and uses her body to change direction. He still believes to have the upper hand by waiting for her to land like planned, but she uses a technique called angel steps that beautifully grounds her without triggering anything. Much to the shock of the audience and confusion to Team Mikigami, the chapter ends with Vivian looking at her partner and thinking that she was going to die. Alright guys, so that was chapter 30 of Reincarnation Coliseum, and I'm going to touch on some things within the chapter that I found interesting. The first thing is Vivian, just overall, she has a rare gear, which is interesting. It's dealing with magnetism, but we don't have an official name for it, so I'm going to just not really be concerned with it until we get an official translation with names. It's either Magne or Magna something. I don't believe the second part is correct yet, so I don't want to like feed you false information on that. So we will wait with that. Another thing, I've tried to make the connection that this rare gear that she has is actually the eye patch or the eye behind the eye patch. It could be anything. You just don't know what you're gonna find in, you know, Reincarnation Coliseum. As Fine said, something that can counter spatial exchange is not on the market, so you would have to go out to actually find something that could like counter it. And now that we know that there's ruins in this universe, that could be something nice to come across in later chapters if Mikigami decides to venture out somewhere. But who really knows? The merchant gets what he gets because he's everywhere and knows what he's doing. And speaking of that ugly bastard, He wants to bang Desmos. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I don't think anyone had ever made the offer to, hey, you know, Desmos, if I win this, can I get one night with you? Like, he didn't say I want Zayd's seat, or, you know, I want to turn you into a slave. I want you just for one night. I want to make you mine in like wifey ways, you know what I mean? And that's pretty admirable for that man, because one of her titties can like kill him and as big as him. So that's why I say this. Pretty cool. Definitely a different change of pace. I hope to see different changes of paces going forward. As I get into the last thing I want to address, which is that Mikigami has to lose. Like, he has to lose at some point. I'm cool with, like, you know, this undefeated streak so far, but it's got to change, or people are going to start falling out of the fandom because of the repetitiveness and everything else. They're going to keep saying, oh, Mikigami's going to win, blah, blah, blah. All right, we know how this goes. He's going to have some type of vanilla sex, because the sex is turning into just vanilla now instead of just revenge plot hardcore like he's been doing. I think Zul, which is what I call her now based on official translation, like, if she's not influencing him to act a certain way with his slaves, he's just gonna be him, the nerdy guy who just bangs women. But that's neither here nor there. Zayd's situation, I think someone asked me when she's gonna come back, and I just don't know. I just don't know about Zayd. Her seat's up for grabs, but she's not even like in her seat. So I don't know if she's banned from the arena because she has no more pawns, or she hasn't summoned anything yet. I'm just like, whatever. Like, whatever. She's gonna come back when she comes back. But at some point, it's gonna be like a time skip into the final battle, and we're gonna have to get Zayd, because Zayd can't just stay gone forever. You know what I mean? Like, Zayd's gonna have to get beat at some point and turned into a slave, or worse, banned from the kingdom, or run away from the kingdom. Something has to happen. Something has to give. I don't know. But again, it is what it is. Hope you enjoyed my last final thoughts on chapter 30 and all that jazz. Make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, comment, do what you do, follow on socials, and until next month with the new issue, if it's coming next month, it should. I didn't see anything about it going on hiatus for a month, so we should be back next month with another video. Holla at your boy, and I'll see you next time.